Years ago, my wife and I were going through some personal difficulties. We were making a decision about whether or not we were going to stay together, very frankly. Everybody in a relationship, I believe, has these moments and times when there's a struggle and you've been together for a while and you're not certain whether this is the right path and you're thinking about these things and so on. And nevertheless, it was a very difficult time emotionally for both of us. And I can remember years and years ago, as we were going through this, what it did for me to be in that state. I became much more loving. I became much more concerned with other people. I became less concerned with the pettiness of so many things that you find yourself worked up about, because I had a different focus in my life. And I can remember thinking, as we resolved it and got back closer together, and today are very close and very loving together, looking back on that time as like something that I had to go through at that time. And that what it did is it helped me to see how absurd it is for us to be focused on the minutia of life. Whether or not the walls are clean, or whether or not the toys are put away, or whether or not your food is prepared on time, or whether somebody is late with something, or whether the phone doesn't ring or does ring or whatever. Like, all of those things are so minute in contrast to what you're really struggling with. And then what it also helped me to do in terms of getting this big picture was to look at some of the things that other people were going through, some of the problems and difficulties that they were having. Very often when something goes wrong in somebody else's life that we're close to, one of our parents gets ill, there's an accident of some kind. When Marilyn had that accident, I can remember how it affected me. And it gives you pause to remind yourself that you have a lot to be thankful for, and that you have a very powerful mind here that can make anything happen that you want to happen, as long as you keep yourself centered or keep yourself focused. I was able to shift from all of those petty little things. I can remember I was doing a show out in Seattle at that time that I was going through that tough period. And somebody asked me a question that 6 months before I would have answered sort of flippantly, sort of smart-alecky. It wouldn't have given it the attention that it deserved. I would have thought of it as perhaps too trivial. And I can remember looking into the woman's eyes who asked me the show. I was on a TV show out there in Seattle, and thinking, because I was struggling at that time, I became much more compassionate towards this person, much more tuned into the pain that they were feeling, even though it seemed trivial in comparison to what I was. And it allowed me to get to be more loving. And then I look back on that now and I think, well, that's what I had to learn. That's what it was for, that there's a purpose in everything. And that perhaps one of the things that I had to learn 8 or 10 years ago was how to be more compassionate. And perhaps the only way I was going to learn how to be more compassionate was to have to go through some of this stuff myself. So, like, you can do that. You can do that now in your own life. Know that there's a lesson in this for you. Know that there are no accidents in this perfect universe. And know that the deep troubles that you may be experiencing or may be hard for you have something in them for you. And that there's a secondary purpose to them. And if it does help you to slow down, and if it does help you to get a bigger picture, and it does help you to be more compassionate and more loving towards other people, then what you do is you begin to bless those things that are in your own life as offering you an opportunity to transcend them. And once you've transcended them, then you don't have to go back to that again. And for sure, my wife and I do not have to go back to ever doubting whether we want to make it and whether we want our family to stay intact and whether we want to stay loving and so on. We don't ever have to question that again. We've been there, and we both learned how to look within. And when you do look within, to be grateful for what this person is offering you. So that every time I think about my wife behaving in a way that I don't like, or vice versa, we've learned how to zip it, how to just not make ourselves miserable by saying things and by doing things that will just create more difficulties. Because we've been on the edge. We've been to that edge, and we've looked over the edge and seen what it's like to maybe have to raise a family as a single parents or whatever, and to be without each other. And now we're a tremendous source of strength to each other, instead of looking for the things that we don't like. So the way to the big picture often is through seeing the problems in your own life from a different perspective, and seeing how difficult other people have it, you know.
This is a very important and significant quality that separates out great teachers, great philosophers, great thinkers, poets, prophets, the people that, again, that we respect and admire, is that they are not doing what they're doing because of what is going to come to them. They're doing what they're doing because this inner voice says, I can't not do it. I'll die if I don't. I've got to get my music out. I can't die with my music in me. And so people who are detached from outcome, the irony of being detached from outcome, I think is summed up in Thoreau's definition of success. I think the best definition of success I've ever heard came right from his mouth. He said, if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. That is, if you find what you know you have to do, what your intuition, what your inner voice tells you is why you're here, and you pursue that and let go of outcome, be unconcerned with how it's going to work out, you're going to find more and more things arriving and showing up in your life. I mean, it's been absolutely true for me. When I detach from outcome, I do my best writing. When I detach from being concerned about how an audience is going to react to me, I feel like I give my best talks. And when I stop being concerned, I mean, I had to learn this a long time ago. I didn't know this back even 20 years ago. I can remember calling my agent and friends and saying, where am I on the bestseller list? Back when Erroneous Zones and Pulling Your Own Strings and Sky's the Limit, those books were topping the bestseller list. And then one day, I don't know if it was my wife, probably was, said to me, you're not on the bestseller list. Your book is on the bestseller list. You are not the bestseller list. Big lesson, huge lesson. Detach from whether people are going to buy it, whether people are going to like it, and know in your heart, and then let go and just watch. And then it starts to show up. I remember when I so desperately wanted to do any national television back in the 70s. Desperately. You know, any show that I could get on, Phil Donahue or the Today Show, Good Morning America, The Tonight Show, and all of that. And none of that was coming. But I was out there, and I had purchased the first couple of printings of my book, and I went out there and I distributed them to various bookstores. I mean, I did crazy things. I filled my car with books, and because every time somebody told me I couldn't do it as a scurvy elephant, I would just say, oh yeah, kind of thing, and thank them for telling me what I couldn't do, and then go out and do it. And then one day, I kind of let go of that, and I wasn't concerned any longer about trying to get on this show. I had a publicist who was doing that. Then I got a phone call from one of the talent coordinators on The Tonight Show, and he called up and he said, would you like to come on and do a pre-interview? Fly out to California. I said, great. I flew out to California, did a pre-interview, and then I flew back to where I was staying in Michigan. Then I got a phone call in Michigan saying, you can do the show next Monday night. It was in August. It was 1976. And Shecky Greene was the host. And I said, great, I'll go on with Shecky Greene. I love Shecky Greene. I flew back out there. I did the show. It was fantastic. I got 20 minutes, the author spot, but we had 2 segments. And it was great. But it was August something, 1976, and it was the day of the Republican National Convention. And Robert Dole was giving the keynote address. And the first time in the history of The Tonight Show, they preempted The Tonight Show. After I had flown back to tell everybody about watch me on The Tonight Show, they had preempted it, and because his speech went too long. I have never been a real big fan of Bob Dole. No, that's just kidding, of course. So I was didn't know what was going to happen and so on. Apparently the next day at the meeting, this friend of mine who was working on the show, his name was Howard Papish, he went in and told them about this guest that had been on Monday night, and Johnny Carson had talked to them and said, look, if he was a good guest, then why don't we invite him to come back out and appear with me before that show airs. They called me back, flew me back out to Michigan, from Michigan. This time there was a limo waiting for me. All right? When I got to The Tonight Show, I did the show on Wednesday night, It was great. We had about 7 or 8 minutes, but we got cut short. And Johnny said to me, would you like to stay over and do the show again tomorrow night? Because we didn't really have enough time to give you. I said, no, I'm busy. I've got my screen door. I said, no. I said, of course. So I did the show the next night. Then on Monday, they showed the preempted show that had been preempted from the week before. So from having absolutely no national exposure of any kind, I had 3 Tonight Show appearances in 4 days. And it's about that business of advancing confidently in the direction of your own dreams. Going out there, doing what your heart tells you to do. I can't tell you how many books I get from people have written this book, and please give me an endorsement, and please tell me how to go about doing. They want these long letters, and I always respond, just do it. Just do it. You can't write my speech. You can't deliver my speech. You can't do it the way I did it. What does your heart tell you? Go out there and never stop. Have that passion and detach from the outcome. Such a powerful lesson. Let go of what's going to come to you, and what is going to come to you will keep showing up in larger and larger and larger amounts.
Just as you become what you think about all day long, so too do your relationships become what you think about. Your life and all of the relationships within it are all purposeful. Generally speaking, the quality of our lives is pretty much related to the quality of our relationship to the people in our lives. And, to add a piece to the equation, our relationships reflect how we relate to ourselves. That's right, to ourselves. When you cultivate the awareness of your body, mind, and soul as one, and experience unity within yourself, you are then ready to share this sense of wholeness and holiness with others. And this is where your relationships come in. When you have love for yourself, that is what you have to give away. What is inside you gets there by way of your thoughts. If you harbor hate, hate is what you give away. If you harbor self-contempt, contempt is what you give away. If you harbor love and compassion is what you give away. Your relationships travel the same course you do. If you learn through suffering and questioning why things were not working out, as I discussed earlier, then your relationships also suffered. If you followed the path of outcomes and began to see that there were lessons to learn in life, then your relationships also reflected this pattern. And if you've gone to purpose and have your life on purpose, your relationships will also reflect this position in your life. Remember, purpose is about giving. Let's take a look at the core ingredient of a relationship that is on purpose, and then examine some specific methods for getting there. At the center of a purposeful relationship is love, but it is more than simply being able to say the words, I love you, for the words are used by people who also berate and harm each other on a daily basis. Love is giving, and it has nothing to do with what you receive. This ingredient of love at the level of giving is how purpose is defined, and it is the ultimate in creating miraculous relationships. If you have love inside of you, that is all that you will have available to give away. You begin to see the fullness of God in everyone you encounter, and the level of your relationships to others takes on the glow of real magic. You see your children and all children not in terms of what they are doing or how they're behaving or misbehaving, but beyond to the invisible part of them, the soul that is in that young body. You meet that soul with love and radiate it outward to them, and they will in turn respond with love. You have loving relationships with others because you bring love, rather than because you seek it from others. Members of your family with whom you have had a difficult time relating are no longer the source of your disdain. Your anger and negativity is gone, replaced by non-judgmental love. This does not require long years of therapy or the assistance of support groups or drugs or special herbs. It requires only that you shift to being a spiritual being first and a physical being second. Your friendships and business relationships can also improve dramatically with this new giving approach. When a conflict arises, you suspend your negative thoughts and instead send out love. When you respond in an unthreatened manner and instead communicate an inner knowing in a peaceful, loving way, you are incapable of being rattled by challenges. You have created a miracle in that relationship. I can remember as a college professor having some gigantic disagreements with my colleagues. They were what we call difficult people to get along with unless you shared their point of view, which very few people did. I discovered I was always able to get my way with these impossible colleagues. I was experiencing real magic where others were experiencing exasperation. The secret? Send them love and ask nothing of them. The colleagues always came around and found it impossible to be nasty or confrontational with me. I simply sent them the love I had inside and then surrendered. This approach to relationships is basically my approach to life. Stay on purpose. Know that you're here to serve. Get off of having to prove yourself. Remove your ego from the encounter and send out love. Giving love with no expectations is the cornerstone of your relationship when you are on purpose. There really is very little else that you need to know. Practice this giving of love without conditions, and you'll find yourself feeling full rather than empty, and blissful rather than miserable. Here are 4 ancillary qualities that go into this real magic in your relationships. 1. Relinquish your need to be right. This is the single greatest cause of difficulties and deterioration in relationships, the need to make the other person wrong or to make yourself right. The spiritual partnership is a relationship of equals. No one needs to be proven wrong. Each person has the right to their own point of view. A simple reminder goes like this: I know how I feel about this, and it doesn't match how she feels. But so what? It is enough that I know it in my mind. I have no need to make her feel wrong. Then stifle yourself, and you have created a miracle right there. You have replaced a potential conflict with a loving response. Practice this, and you will see love replacing anger between you. This is also true in your relationships to all others. Your children need to be guided, not to be made wrong. The embarrassment that goes with being proven stupid leads to a self-image of stupidity. You can replace those statements designed to prove how superior you are with loving responses designed to help your children and others examine their own point of view. This can be applied in business, with strangers that you meet, in disputes with your neighbors, in virtually all human relationships. 2. Allow space. Let there be space in your togetherness. When you love someone for what they are, rather than what you think they should be, or for how they please you, then allowing for privacy and space comes automatically. The clinging relationships racked with jealousy and fear come from individuals who believe they have a right to dictate what the other person ought to be. Rather than regarding the need of your partner to have alone time as a threat, see it as a time for renewal that you celebrate. Make every effort to help each other have that space. The irony is, the more space you allow and encourage within the relationship, the more the relationship will flourish. 3. Eliminate the idea of ownership. Seek to enjoy each other, not to possess each other. No one wants to feel owned. No one wants to feel like a possession. No one wants to be dominated or controlled. We all show up here with a purpose, and that purpose gets thwarted when any human being attempts to interfere with our heroic mission. Ownership is the greatest inhibitor to feeling a sense of purpose and mission in one's life. You don't have the right to tell the people with whom you are in a relationship what they ought to be doing while they're here on earth. That is only between each person and their soul. You may succeed in imprisoning another, and you may have a marriage that lasts for 60 years, but you do not have a loving relationship if either partner feels owned or like a possession. This is the lesson I had to learn the hard way. It cost me dearly. A painful divorce and many unpleasant hours in hostile conflict. Today, I can't even conceive of the idea that I could own my wife. She is her own person, and my own relationship to her is based upon acknowledging that in her. It is indeed reciprocal. It came about through giving, not demanding, through respect, not criticism. Number 4, you do not have to understand. What a great lesson this is in learning how to make all relationships work at a magical level. You simply do not have to understand why someone else would want to do and think the way they do. The fact that you are willing to say, I do not understand, and that is fine, is the greatest understanding you could exhibit. You are together not to understand each other, but to aid each other in living a life at purpose. These are the qualities that make for a purposeful relationship. They all orbit around the planet of unconditional love. Get to this place, and you will begin to see results in all of your relationships.
This idea of not dying with your music still in you is really about an awareness that there is some kind of purpose. And that purpose to everything and to your life is not necessarily based upon something that we can figure out with our brain. Like, my purpose is to become an accountant, or my purpose is to find the perfect place to live or the perfect mate. I don't think it's done that way. It's never, to me, an intellectual thing. It's always something that's of the heart. When I ask people to point to themselves they never point to their brain. They always point to their heart. And Gibran, the Lebanese poet, said that when you're born, your work is placed in your heart. There's something that you feel, and it's very hard to put it into words. In fact, I think it defies words, because words are just more symbols of something that we're trying to express. And it's the feeling that we have in here that I'm here, that I have a heroic mission of some kind, that there's something more to my life than just simply going through the motions and being a commuter and collecting a certain amount of stuff. So to me, not dying with your music still in you is what Maslow called the top of the pyramid. And you remember the pyramid of the self-actualization that begins with the baseline being the longest part, but the baseline is just taking care of basic needs. Like you learn how to handle and provide for yourself. So you have to, at the very base of this pyramid, you have to feed yourself. And you have to have your needs for water, and your needs for food, and your needs for shelter as you move up this, and then your needs for sort of like companionship, and ultimately a need to feel a sense of belonging, a need to feel loved as you begin to move up this pyramid, until you get to the very top. And at the very top of this pyramid, there's just a tiny little space up there. And this tiny little space at the top of the pyramid is what we call purpose, where you're living your life as if why you're here is really clear to you. A sense of purpose is not that I'm doing what I was told I was supposed to do, that was programmed into me by somebody in the sky before I showed up here, but that I feel as if why I'm here is being actualized. And when people ask me about how do I get to that place of purpose in my life, I always remind them that your life is like what Joel Goldsmith called it, a parenthesis in eternity. So who you are, Carl Jung referred over and over again to the part of us that is eternal, the infinite part of us. He said the telling question of a person's life is their relationship to the infinite. And until you have that relationship with the infinite, you will not know anything about purpose. So that you almost have to learn how to step outside of yourself and begin to witness yourself from the perspective of who you are as not being this thing that you're observing. You go to the observer, and then you even get to watch the observer. And that's when it starts to get a little bit complicated. But as the observer, or as the witness to the observer, you're sort of watching and noticing. But the sense of purpose comes from being that witness rather than what you are witnessing. And when you get to that place in your life, you begin to realize that who you are in this physical world, this name that you've been given and this body that you are occupying, is nothing more than a parenthesis in something called eternity. It opens parentheses at the moment of your conception. It closes parentheses at the moment of your death. But when you come into this parentheses, when you show up here, you show up with nothing, with no thing. And you go from nowhere, N-O-W-H-E-R-E, nowhere. And in one instant, conception, you're in now here, N-O-W-H-E-R-E. It's all the same. It's just a little question of spacing. Nowhere, now here. So now you're in now here. Hopefully, all of you listening are in now here. There may be some of you listening that are not now here. But while you're in now here, you have some kind of an awareness that you're going nowhere. You're going back to nowhere. So it's nowhere, open parentheses, now here, back to nowhere. It's all one. But there's something different about now here than nowhere. At least we think there is, but we don't have any real confirmation about that unless you're Brian Weiss. Or you know about past lives or future lives and so on. Now, one of the things that one of the great teachers in my life Carlos Castaneda, whom I've referred to on many occasions, one of the things that he says is that the problem with humanity living at ordinary levels of awareness is that we are all beings who are going to die, but we act as if we're not, so that we don't really ever come in contact with our immortality or our infinity at all, because we are acting as if this body is all that there is and it's going to live forever, when in fact there's an awareness in there that we're all going nowhere.